Hello, siblings of the light. I miss y'all. I've been missing y'all. And I really miss doing a lot of the live shows and everything. Of course, as I said, my computer isn't fixed yet. And it's going to be a while before that gets fixed, especially if I, don't get any help. I have two people that are subscribed to me on Buy Me a Coffee, and that's probably the best way you can help as well, is either getting a subscription or just donating to me whenever you can through that app or website, however you may go to it. But I am putting content on there. I am, putting things on the app and the website so that, it's actually something worth buying and something worth putting money into besides, of course, me making my videos and other such things. With that said, I also have a book coming out called Paradise Transcended. It's going to be a great book. It's about ascension and how ascension and the process of ascension really starts back at Eden and the Tree of Life and things of that nature. And it's going to be very mystical. There is going to be mystical practices in the book besides, theological analysis and, contextual connection between Christianity, Gnosticism, and even the occult. So look forward to that. I'm actually looking for beta readers right now. I don't know if you've seen some of my posts, but I'm actually looking for beta readers for that. So if you're interested in becoming a beta reader, just comment on that, or of course go down into my link tree and you can find me on X and leave a message or anything like that. Just find a way to contact me and I'll definitely get you on the beta reader list. Now, with that said, today I wanted to talk about a very important subject. Something that I think has been on my mind since I started this channel and actually became a Gnostic, really. And that's the idea of creating families, the population of the world, and continuing the Gnostic tradition. And what does that entail? Some of this I really touched on in my Cathar video. If you've watched my Cathar video, you would notice that I really, hone in on the idea that the Cathars, weren't as celibate as some people make the Cathars out to be. Many will say, oh, Gnosticism is an evil because they don't believe in the proliferation of humanity. They don't believe in continuing the human species and things of that nature, which is completely false. Really, it's not as simple, especially as I highlighted in my Cathar video. The Cathars didn't just say, oh, it's, evil to make children, it's evil to have sex. Rather, they had, a system to where, there was the laity or the people who were outside of the supreme circle of the, of the inner circle, that were separate from the inner circle. And these people that were at the center were called the perfecti, and they would receive the rites of consolamentum. Now, consolamentum was like a laying of hands, and with this laying of hands, it was a form of baptism. And with that baptism, one became completely purified, perfected, and in such a manner, they would give up all worldly things, everything, even having sex and having children and things like that. But that was only after the consolamentum. Before the consolamentum, a lot of people would, have children and would continue living a normal life, but, of course, not a debaucherous life. It's not like you could be debaucherous and, take the consolamentum and, be forgiven and all that jazz. No, you had to live a virtuous life to even be a part of the community that was called the Cathars. And so the laity, or the outsiders of the perfecti, would have children, have farms, make crops, have businesses, all of this, things. And this is, sort of what Catholics have, really. If you look at the Catholic tradition, you have the Catholic Church, and, those people, they don't have children, they don't have sex or anything like that. And many of them sometimes had a life before this, before becoming priests and things of that nature. And so it's not until they take their rites of becoming priests and things like that do they, really live a celibate life and things of that nature. Now, that's, of course, that's making it sound more simple than that. Of course, in the Catholic tradition, you have some people that have been celibate all their life and are completely virginal. And then, they become priests and things like that. But in some cases, you do have some situations where some people will become priests or deacons or something like that. And they are, they have families or had families, they're not completely virginal and things like that. So in that way, the Catholics and the Cathars are very much alike. So really, you can't say that the Cathars were evil in that way. But that is sort of a way for me to open the door to the idea of what we're facing right now in the world. And that is a dramatic demographic decline, a major demographic decline, or a major decline in population. And this is for two reasons. One, we have an aging population that, of course, is not getting any younger. I mean, look at me. I'm only 30. I'm only in my 30s, and I got a really white beard and everything. So I can't really say, part of this aging population. But I am getting up there. A lot of people in my age range, especially females, when they start having children at this age, they consider it a geriatric pregnancy, which I find wild. But, of course, many people of my generation are infantilized, and are made to feel younger than, what they really are. So, we don't have the same mannerisms and things of that nature as the older folks of past generations. A lot of that responsibility really has been taken from us, which is interesting enough, but, I don't want to get into that discussion. But with that said, as we do age, there is a die-off effect, right? And that's what's happening with the boomers right now. Boomers are finally at that age where they're passing. Soon there won't be any more boomers. And, this is just the natural way of things, and that is life, itself. Well, here in this world. And so as people pass on, of course, new generations arise, and, the next older generation takes power and things like that, and so on and so forth. But one of the problems we face now is that the millennial generation and Gen Z is not having children like the boomers and Gen X did. Now, there's many reasons for this. We have the idea of propaganda. Many people that are millennials will remember episodes from their favorite children cartoons where it told them that the world will end because of humans and climate change. But you can prevent that by not having kids. And that is something that has been really drilled into our heads. Like I said, I'm 33 right now. So I am a youngest of the millennial, but I am a millennial. Hold on. Yeah. But I am a millennial. So, sorry about that, y'all. I just got I got a phone mount because, as you know, my computer's not working. So I'm doing all these videos on my phone now. So, now I have a phone mount and I'm like trying to get used to this. But anyway, so yeah, there was a lot of propaganda behind the idea of not having children and, ensuring that there wasn't such a population boom that, it didn't destroy the world with overconsumption and things of that nature. But that time never came, and it was never going to happen, really. I mean, I can say a lot about this, I really don't believe the fact that we were going to even see such a population boom that it would have caused the world to end. I think that we would have found ways to mitigate this. I think we already would have been to Mars already if it wasn't for such propaganda. But with that said, that is some of the propaganda we were born with, and it's really taken its toll. And then couple this with the laissez-faire capitalism that has been running rampant. Well, I don't want to say laissez-faire capitalism because that has other connotations. But what I'm trying to say is the idea of helicopter money. I don't know if you ever heard this, but basically the government prints money and then it's borrowed against a newer generation to come. And so they print money and it's borrowed against the next generation. And, this is all about the debt cycles and things of that nature. Well, with these debt cycles, and if, we don't have people producing, income the way people imagined it. Again, this goes into a lot of propaganda we were sold to when we were younger. But, sorry y'all, I just got done making beef stroganoff and I cut onions and stuff like that. I wash my hands and stuff like that, but I think some of the onion juices are still in the air or something, and it's burning my eyes. But with that said, basically is to say that the cost of living has become such that it's hard to keep up with. People barely have homes to call their own, let alone it's getting really much harder to rent now. And these things have all culminated in the fact that, culminated in the idea that, we just can't afford to have children. And so here we are, in a very childless era. And it's really starting to show. I went to Walmart, during this past season, and there was barely anybody shopping for school supplies. And they shut that down really quickly. It was crazy. And there was still so much school supplies on the shelves. Which is wild to me because when I was a kid, of course, you would see people hunting that stuff down. It was hard to keep school supplies on the shelves. And it was because there were so many kids going to school. But now, it's not an issue. It's not an issue. Actually, it's an issue to sell it. To sell school supplies. And you have the elementary schools starting to shut down. And some elementary schools or districts are merging because there's not enough children to go to that elementary school. Some elementary schools are releasing their children, and the districts are selling the buildings, and there's children that are going into the middle schools early. Not because it's time for them to go to middle school, but because there's so little children at their elementary school that they are having to bring the kids there to the middle school. And the thing is that the middle school is starting to dry up. There's very little children coming into the middle school. So they have the room. And so that's how they're filling up the space, is by bringing in the elementary kids and closing down the elementary schools. Which is sad, really. To be honest, like I said, growing up, I never figured this would be an issue. Never really figured this would be an issue. But coming into being a Gnostic teacher and sharing my Gnostic wisdom, this was one of the things that I really wanted to dispel. Because as Gnostics, we don't, reject life. In fact, a couple of the aeons and a lot of our lineages is named Phos and Zoe, light and life. Zoe is the personification of life. And, Zoe literally means life in Greek. And so, we literally, worship life to a degree. Not that we actually worship aeons, it's not like that. But, as I said before, aeons are kind of like a step above angels. I don't know if that makes sense. But, yes, so one of these aeons is Zoe, and that's life. We love life. We should be encouraging life. And as Gnostics, we should really be thinking about this time. And especially in this era where Gnosticism is looked down on so much because of all the years of propaganda against our own religions and our own spiritual tradition. The replacement rate globally is 2.1 people. So basically, there has to be, for every 10 families, there needs to be 3 children made. And then every other family has to have at least 2 children to make, global replacement. Right now in the U.S., it's still recorded at 1.6 children being replaced. But that's if you calculate with the boomers still in the system. But if you take out the boomers, which you really should, because their children are already grown and had children of their own. If you take out the boomers, then it gets scarier. Because as you start to take out generations, you see that the replacement rate among Generation Z is like 0.6. 0.3, a much smaller. We're way below replacement rate. At this point, there's just not going to be many kids. And the reason why this is, there's many-fold reason why, this is important. One, and let's think of this on first as a material thing, okay? Because, we all got to eat, we all got to survive, we all got to, be in this and live, The economy works on the idea of death and birth. If there's too many people dying and not enough people, being born, then what you end up having is such a population decline that the economy as a whole begins to decline. And what ends up happening is that you end up having a literal economic depression, because you start losing workers, you start losing consumers, And so therefore companies start shutting down. And of course, as a Gnostic, you might be thinking to yourself, well, I mean, that's not that bad. Which I can see why you would say that. We don't want consumerism, like at such a rampant, central point of people's lives that, they're consumed by consuming. They have to have the next big thing. They have to have, the bigger and better. No, we don't want that as Gnostics. We want people to love themselves, find the inner kingdom of light, and to, focus on, pursuing the pleroma and pursuing the holier things in life. But the thing is that whenever you have this kind of population decrease, and as the economy starts to buckle, businesses will start to close. And the thing is that businesses don't want to go under. Businesses don't want to die. And so what they'll do is they'll accumulate a lot of debt and keep accumulating debt until the whole company implodes. Now, you have some companies working towards trying to do something like that, because you already see many companies shutting down certain locations, their stores, and this helps. Really, this would be the best thing, but the thing is that these companies will only focus in the highest populated places, and, of course, where that's going to be, we're not really sure. That's still to be said, because, this population decrease is going to be happening over the next 5 to 10 years. And with that said, the Depression is supposed to last from 2030 to 2050. And with these companies dying, and I'm not talking just about JCPenney, I'm not just talking about malls or strip malls, I'm not just talking about Chipotle or McDonald's, I'm talking about grocery stores too. You have to imagine that we don't need as many Walmarts if there's not that many people. But what does that mean for places that are already sparsely populated, and many of these stores' profit margins are already very slim. There's so many stores right now, so many grocery stores, so many places right now that are already on slim profit margins, and are only there because there is a certain population of people in that area. But you have to imagine that there's some kind of economic socialism happening within, these companies, because you'd have to imagine that some of these people are getting their paychecks because of the overall company business rather than, that store's business. But you have to understand that whenever a store is not making the profits that it should be, they will shut down. And of course, as an overall company, they can try to push this, but if they push it too much, it will make the whole company go under. Now, with that said, I have to make you realize that there is no preventing this. It's already said and done. So much of Generation X have aborted their children. Millennials aborted even more children. And, Gen Z is on track to abort even more children. And with these abortions, of course, this adds to the population problem. And then, of course, the other cultural issues we have, where, you have the divorce court thing, where men are afraid to even have kids now because they don't want to have to face divorce court for women who decide they don't want to be bound to their husbands anymore and end up divorcing them and taking them to court, and their whole existence is paid for by this man who can't even see their children half the time. And so men are just opting out of not having children. And then, of course, you have women who want to be career women, and of course are opting for corporations rather than, making their homes and building their homes with a man. And I'm not saying that all these things are necessarily wrong, but I think that a lot of these things are completely out of balance now. I mean, obviously, because we have a depopulation problem now. And like I said, this is something that we can't reverse. We are going to go into this economic depression. This is going to happen. We have to face that music. There is a rebound effect to every choice. Every choice has to be given back its due. What you reap is what you sow. And so since a lot of people were selfish, and there was so many people who were selfish, we will be sowing that selfishness, we'll be reaping that selfishness, and it'll come in the fact of financial pain and economic pain, a pain of low demographics. And like I said, that's going to be happening, and this is going to really peak in 2040. But the pain will be felt from 2030 to 2050. Especially if, people don't learn the lesson and don't have kids. It could extend longer. But with that said, even though we can't prevent it, we can lower the amount of time we go through this. And with that said, we can have children now. People can start having children now. And in the next 16 years or less, 15 maybe, we won't have to go through the full 20-year period. But we definitely don't want it to extend it out. So people really need to start thinking about having children. Now, with that said, we have to think of every crisis is an opportunity to shape our reality, to really figure out where the vulnerable spots are and fill those gaps, and especially in the way that we want to fill them, to the way that we want to see society in the future. We have an opportunity now as Gnostics to make more children, to develop communities. And by doing that, by building communities and having children, and having a lot of children, I'm telling you, it's going to take a lot of kids, and pushing life and light in our communities, then we have an opportunity to not only make people take Gnosticism seriously, to make people take our tradition seriously, but to make Gnosticism, and our traditions of Gnosticism, into some of the most popular religious traditions in the future. But you have to have kids to do that. You really do. There's no way around that. I mean, the fact of the matter that there's so many such leftist ideas, and I hate saying that because I have my leftist ideas and I have my own things that of course people could call me a liberal one, but I also have a strong conservative streak. I would say that my political view is very balanced. And I think as a Gnostic, we really just have to have that balanced outlook on everything, not just our politics, but just life in general. And with this, we have an opportunity. Oh no. Yes, so one thing I have come to realize, being on the internet and things of that nature, is that there is a lot of leftists in Gnostic circles. And I think that's an issue. Because if we want to grow this tradition, if we want to grow the traditions of Gnosticism and really make them strong, then we have to have a natalist outlook. We have to create children. We have to create families. We have to add to our communities in so many different ways, not just children at that point. And some of you could be saying, well, Elder Zamraya, it's expensive to have a family. It's expensive to even think about starting to get a house, or to even get an apartment, to have a car. Well, yeah, it is. But the thing is that our tradition is all about transcendence. Our tradition is all about overcoming limitations that Yaldabaoth and the other archons have set before us. So we really can't use these things as an excuse. We have to overcome these things, and we have to make children. Even if that means living in mom and dad's house with your wife or girlfriend, whatever you may decide to do. Or, live in mom and dad's house with your husband or boyfriend. Hell, living in mom and dad's house with your throuple. Or your aunt, uncles, grandmas, whatever. Whatever the case may be, you have to accept that we're not going to be in the same positions as the boomers, as Gen X, as some of the older millennials. We're not going to be in those same places. And we have to accept that it's okay to bring children into this world, even with that, with what very little we have. Breastfeed. Don't just rely on formula. That would be one way to cut out expenses. Is to don't think automatically you have to buy formula. Breastfeed. Go to second-hand shops and buy clothing there. There's so many different ways that you can cut the budget to have children. And trust me, your parents want grandkids. And so they will be more than willing. And trust me, they know. For some, it might take convincing. So be it. I get it. And it's not going to be easy for everyone. But that's the thing. It's never been easy. Life has never been easy. And it's not about making life easy for anyone. That can sound cold and harsh, but it is just a fact of life. But that's the thing. That's why we need to be focusing on doing this and making our communities, coming together and helping each other out. There's going to be people in our communities that can't have children and want to help take care of children. There's going to be people in our communities that, will go the extra mile to help everyone else out. But we have to find ways to help each other out. If you're worried about medicine and healthcare, well, let's get back to the old ways and let's use herbalism. Let's get midwives. You know, let's produce the folkish way of doing things. You know, like folk magic. You know, like that's the basis of folk magic was midwifery and healing people with herbs and spells and things like that. And really, if that sounds backwards or barbaric to you, then I don't understand why you're even a spiritual person in the first place. I mean, yeah, I don't have any better way to say it. If you believe in the way we believe, if you believe in the Christian magic, if you believe in, you know, living off the land and stuff like that, then let's go for it. Let's do it, man. But we have to do it together. We have to create communities. We have to connect. And, you know, if that means creating communities first online, and then, you know, going forward with that, you know, then let's do that. And like that's part of the reason why I'm doing this. That's the reason why I founded the Holy Reintegrated Church. That's the whole reason why I founded the Mystical Order of the Nazarene. It's because I believe in this. I want to do these things. But the thing is that you can't do it alone. You know, if I could snap my fingers and make it happen, God, that would be just so amazing, you know? But the thing is that it doesn't work that way. You got to have other people. People that believe in what you believe. People who understand the world as you understand the world. We have to come together no matter, you know, and if you have your own YouTube channel, cool. That's awesome. There's actually some people that I talk to on X or interact with on X that have channels, and I share their channels on other platforms and stuff like that. They might not know this, but yes, like I share their stuff, and you know, I hope they share my stuff. But we need to get more out there and connecting with each other. We have to be brave and take these leaps, because the thing is that we have before us such a beautiful and amazing opportunity. We can't look at this as, you know, just pain and death and destruction. Like, no, we can't be pessimistic about this. We have to look at this as a time to bring forth more force, more light, more Zoe, more life. Pray on it, y'all. Think about this. And, like, do your own research. Look this up. I'm telling you, this demographic thing is very serious. And it's something that we cannot avoid. But like I said, it is an opportunity. We can come together. We can create these communities. You know, find someone to love. And make children. Hell, even as a community, we can start putting on great rite ceremonies. And, you know, get some people pregnant. And we raise children together as a community. There are ways that we can mitigate these issues. You know, even if it's very highly creative and mystical, we can do it. We just have to do it together. No one can do it alone. I can't do it alone. I need y'all. We need each other. And with that said, I just want to say I love y'all so much. Again, I'm happy to be back. I'm so sorry I wasn't here last week, and I'm so sorry that I can't do these live streams anymore. I'm hoping to get my computer back again. You know, like I said, donate to me. And, you know, hey, like I said, when you donate to me, none of this comes into my own pocket. So, yeah, sure, I will be using some of this money to get a computer again. You know, of course, to make content. But all the money goes back into the Holy Reintegrated Church. All the money goes back into the Mystical Order of Nazarene. All the money goes back into this channel. And creating and lifting up this tradition. That even means so that this money would go into building this community, trying to get us somewhere. But I want to have a discussion about this, but it would have to be more private. To go into detail about this and to talk about like exactly what I would want to do and what we should do. Like, first of all, that's not just up to me, that's up to us as a community. So like we need to be communicating somehow. I guess that's up to me, really. I think one of the best ways to do that is to be on X and use one of these. I see, what is it called? What is it called? There's a new messaging system. I don't even know if it's still on here. It looks like it's not. Well, we will have to create a messaging system of some kind. I guess we'll do something like a Telegram or something like that. Yeah. I'll actually have to think about that. But with that said, for now, go down into my my link tree, look at my different social medias and things of that nature. Donate, buy some merch, buy a book. Remember, I have a book coming, so if you want to be a beta reader, reach out to me for that. And like I said, y'all, I love you so much. Agape salutes. Stella. Ego sum Stella Matutina. Sorry. Love is light. And we are the morning star. We can do this, y'all. We can do this. We can do this. They're just going to take each other. Remember the light, and the light will remember you when it's time.